Hi there. My name is Dr. Mark Donaldson, and I'd like to spend a few minutes talking to you today about the benefits of BufferPro. In this module in particular, we'll be focusing on the clinician interest and understanding. In other words, the science of buffering and how it works. Now, you may remember that we have a system of pH in our bodies on a unitless scale from 0 to 14, and normal or physiological pH tends to be right in the middle, around about 7 to 7.4. The challenge that we have from a local anesthetic standpoint is that all of our local anesthetics tend to be packaged in an acidic medium. We do that because it extends their shelf life, and it also allows for epinephrine to go into solution. I'm sure you can imagine that injecting something as acidic as 3.82 can be, ouch, sore. And oftentimes it will take a little bit of time for the body to naturally buffer that local anesthetic in order to activate it. Now, as a fun fact, our plain solutions, or those local anesthetics that do not contain epinephrine, can be packaged at a pH much more close to physiological pH. So plain solutions tend not to require buffering, and they also tend to be much less painful type injections. All right, so how exactly does this work, and why do you need to buffer your local anesthetic? Well, I've already mentioned that if we can take our local anesthetic and buffer them closer to physiological pH, the pain of injection almost disappears. Secondly, when we provide buffered local anesthetics to our patients, it crosses the nerve membrane much more quickly. So instead of the physician injecting and then leaving the room while the drug begins to take effect, the effectiveness of the medication is almost immediate. And then lastly, predictability. So from a dental standpoint, we always want predictability, and patients will experience much more effective and profound local anesthesia when we buffer our local anesthetics. So what exactly are we talking about? Well, first of all, this is all evidence-based, and I'm happy to provide these documents as well as any other published literature in support of this practice. In fact, I was involved with some of the early work that was done. Here's one publication from 2016 with Dr. Jason Goodchild, and a study that we repeated back in 2019, both published in Compendium. Now, the science of buffering is taking our local anesthetics, which again are packaged in that very acidic medium, and trying to get them closer, buffering them up to physiological pH where they're in their base form. In other words, their uncharged form. So what does it look like? Well, when we take our local anesthetic at a pH of 3.5, about 99.996% of that is in a charged form and cannot penetrate nerve tissue. It takes time for the body to move that local anesthetic from a pH of 3.5 closer to physiological pH so that the drug can in fact penetrate tissue and cause profound local anesthesia. So this is what it looks like coming right out of the dental cartridge. And when we buffer it closer to physiological pH of, let's say, 7.4, we actually shift this stoichiometry equation and we create much more effective local anesthesia that can much more easily and much more quickly penetrate nerve tissue in order to cause profound local anesthesia. Now, there's a collateral benefit to buffering local anesthetics, and that is that this equation also creates as a byproduct carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide in and of itself is also a local anesthetic. And so in the clinical trials that brought some of these products to market, 98.5% of patients said they didn't even feel the needle penetrating tissue because of that carbon dioxide bubble. Now, something else unique happens, and that is that once the drug is in the nerve and local anesthetic has taken part, the local anesthetic equation actually goes in the opposite direction. And what that ultimately does is it traps the local anesthetic in the nerve, making the local anesthetic much more effective. Now, what does all of this mean at the end of the day? Well, it means that buffering your local anesthetic has a much more important clinical significance, not just to clinicians, but definitely to our patients. And you can see this cover story in the Journal of the American Dental Association that buffering of local anesthetics has almost a 3-time greater likelihood of achieving successful anesthesia. So the final question you're probably asking is, well, is it hard to do? And the fact of the matter is, with BufferPro, all we're going to be doing is taking the device out of the package, reaching for our cartridge of local anesthetic, pushing the two pieces together, and in less than 30 seconds, you have buffered your local anesthetic. Again, my name is Dr. Mark Donaldson, and it's a pleasure for me to speak with you today. Thank you.